Good morning. It's Pop again, Dennis Murray. Um, Today is Popcast 52, and it's called Nature's Wisdom, Part 2. We're talking about the aspect of nature's wisdom uh, that is variety. Nature, in its wisdom, uses variety all over the place. I went to Wikipedia, and it turns out there's between 8 and 8.7 million species of plants and animals in the world. And they say that there's a huge number of them that are not at all investigated, and that there may be quite a few more. Um, in terms of human species, uh, we have species that are called homo, where the species called Homo sapiens, but there were other species called Homo with different second names, and there were about 10 of those. And then before them, there were species that were hominids, but not yet Homo. And, and there were about 10 of them. There seems to be some argument about some of the details. So whether all of those species are in some way part of our genetic inheritance, or can be referred to as ancestor species. But there's a boatload of them. Um, for whatever reason, nobody really understands why all of the other Homo species, about 9 of them, um, went extinct. The latest, perhaps as recently as 30 or 40,000 years ago, including some species just very recently discovered that apparently existed only on an island someplace in the Pacific that was so small that they look they look somewhat like hobbits in the in the stories created by Tolkien and in the movies. So there's a huge variety, both in plants and animals and in people. Um, in religions, how many religions are there? How many philosophies are there? A really vast number. And uh, trees, for example, there's over 1,351 species of trees. Again, according to Wikipedia, which, like I said yesterday, I'm trying to keep my conversation, at a level where we can all access it easily. Facebook, Wikipedia, that sort of thing. Um, I'm reading more difficult books, but I'm using those to find some more examples. And birds, for example, how many birds have you seen in your lifetime in your area? Um, Flowers. Can you think of all the various kinds of flowers that your parents, your family, and friends have, and you yourself may have um, uh, found in your gardens or planted in your gardens over the years? There's just a variety, and for good reason. When we all know, if you've ever put any plants in your garden or taken care of somebody's garden with various plants in it, you've got to look at how much sunshine there is, how much rain there is, how much, what kind of soil we have, and whether you can supplement with watering, whether they have to, grow as best they can alongside a highway or in some other situation where they're not going to get watering. So the choice of what things go best in each of these circumstances is important. You're not going to have flowers that need sunshine thrive in shade, and vice versa. Um, Not to mention, the pruning and all the other things you have to do, but just the variety of flowers that nature offers, and the reasons why some varieties thrive in these circumstances and some in those. So, I mean, it's all fairly obvious. I'm just drawing our attention to the obvious because certainly I've discovered in my life I'm a bit slow on the uptake. The obvious often needs to be drawn to my attention. Other people are a lot quicker than me to see it, but um, I think there's the old expression, as plain as the nose on your face. You can't see things that are there all the time, that are part of everyday life, that are just taken for granted. So there may be some plant in your backyard that just really doesn't belong there, that other people see doesn't belong there. As soon as they come into your yard, it's not right. But to you, it's been there for years, and it's part of your backyard. You just don't see it the same way that people do who just entered your backyard. So sometimes the obvious needs to be drawn to our attention so that we can, maybe gain something from becoming aware of something we already knew that was pretty obvious. Um, the I'm going to bring it around to human stuff. Just an example of our limits as humans, and the rules we have to keep variable in order to be able to talk about things that aren't really easily subject to strict rules. So when I was reading about the species, I discovered that scientists use a system of designating species by a series of rules, of course. Uh, but it turns out that the definitions they use have a lot of problems with them. Sometimes there are specific species where it's really hard to say whether it should belong in this group or that group. Um, they're closely related, for example, or they may have been hybridized. So now we got something that's sort of part of both groups, and it's kind of hard to say which group it should be in. And all of this is going to be a point about variety in a minute. Um, there are species that reproduce asexually. And that really complicates matters because sexual reproduction allows to use things like DNA for defining how the species vary. Oh, yeah, well, this one has this DNA, that one has that DNA, so we're good. But for asexual reproduction species, that doesn't work as well. Um, so the things like fungi, in theory, every single specific fungi is a subspecies. Um, the point being, according to the articles I've read, was that while none of the definitions that could be offered, and there's a lot of varieties of definitions used, or proposed among scientists for how to divide species up. While none of them is entirely satisfactory, the scientists and conservationists need a species definition that allows them to get practical work done, and regardless of the theoretical difficulties. So, you can't have it perfect, but you have to have it. So you come up with definitions that you all understand aren't entirely correct, and you use them. So, it's akin to nature's variety. Some things you can be very precise about, some things you have to be more flexible. Now, one specific final note, one way that there's variety is how people talk to each other. I've just skim read a book where the guy is famous for using snarling putdowns of people that he disagrees with. And he actually set a tone, an important tone in French literature. Um, and another book I read by one of my very favorite people, Walter Lippmann, called The Public Philosophy, written in 55. Um, he is giving disagreements with undertones of relationship. He wants to come to some kind of a better working understanding with everybody. And in order to do so, he's making it plain that he has a disagreement to offer, but in the context of he hopes that some agreement can be found that's going to help improve the situation in our country. So enough for today. We're not going to build Rome in a day. See you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.